Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Blue Breakdown as the New York Giants have a number of players on the bubble going into Thursday's preseason finale at home against the New England Patriots. Remember, the cut down from 90 to 53 must be in by Tuesday, August 26th at 4 p.m. I'm Paul Dottino. All right, let's go through the state of the Giants as they've got these bubble guys who are teetering on the possibility of making their 53-man roster. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind, and these are generalities before we even get down to some of the guys that you're going to want to look at. Number one, head coach Brian Daboll has always been very, very shy and protective about playing his starters during the preseason. This year, in his fourth year with the New York Giants, he has decided that maybe it's best to give it a try. So he did. Got a lot of his starters, all of his healthy starters, that is, some work in the first quarter against Buffalo. Then got them some more work in the first half against the New York Jets. Where does he stand with one preseason game to go? Well, we know his proclivity is not to play his regulars. He's done it in the first two preseason games, albeit in limited amounts, and it's worked out well. Logic tells us in the final preseason game, as you close in on a week and a half away from opening day, that, actually it's more like 2 weeks, that players are probably not going to play, or at least the starters. Yes, obviously players will play. But logic tells us that many of the teams who have played their starters in either games 1 and or 2, they're probably saying to themselves, let's not whistle past the graveyard. Let's knock on wood, know that we've been healthy through the first 2 weeks of the preseason. We've gotten our veterans some time. Maybe it's time to pull back and not push our luck and not challenge the football gods to see if our guys will stay healthy. Logic tells us that it's more likely that these coaches who have decided to deploy their players as Brian Daboll has, well, they're more likely to sit their guys in game number 3. There may still be a few coaches who go for maybe one series with their starters, and maybe that's what Brian Daboll will do. But knowing how shy he was about doing it in the past, logic says he probably won't. But it still remains to be seen because he hasn't told any of the media how he is going to sort things out. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, remember you've got to get from 90 to 53. Now, there are a number of battles that I'm going to point to where you can get out the microscope and try to make your own decision on some of these guys who are going to be walking a tightrope going into this game. Because remember, the preseason games are the heaviest grades on the report card. So, for example, a guy like Jalin Hyatt, he missed the first preseason game, played a little bit last week against the Jets, had a nice catch, ran a couple of really good routes, had a terrific offseason. But then once the preseason started, either because of durability concerns or not getting a lot of targets, he has not exactly continued the big splash that he did during the offseason. Well, Jalin Hyatt, one would expect, is going to get some targets in this game against the Patriots. One would think to solidify, and I say solidify because I do think his odds are still better than not that he's on the team, but to solidify his position, he's going to have to make plays in this game because there are a lot of other wide receivers in the Giants receiving room that have been making plays not just during the course of training camp, but also during the first 2 games of the preseason. Guys like Bo Collins, who was also given to something on specials. Guys like Gunnar Olszewski. Guys like Little Jordan Humphrey. Dylan Cambry. All of these guys, they're kind of in that fringe situation. And so it might come down to the guy who has a real kick butt game against the Patriots. Maybe that's the guy who gets on the 53. Now, I do want to warn you folks of one thing, and that is over the last several years, there's been an average of 1 player per team to get claimed on waivers by someone else in the league. So let's just remember something. The Giants have to jettison 37 players to get from 90 to 53. How many of those guys are going to get claimed? Well, I do believe that Tommy DeVito is going to get claimed. I do. I just don't think there's any other way around it. If that's what the Giants are forced to do, to release him, I do think he'll get claimed. That'll be one. Based on historical averages, that might be the only Giants player that gets claimed, although I do think they are going to have to release several quality NFL players. That's how good this roster has become. But the odds tell you, based on what's happened in this league for several years, the Giants are going to get most of the guys who they want to return to the practice squad. And I think that's what's important to remember here. Don't overreact to the first 53 that comes out after 4 p.m. on Tuesday, because it's only the first 53. There will be adjustments and considerations made by Wednesday afternoon as they deal with IR players, as they deal with claims from other teams, and of course, as they decide to re-sign practice squad players. These are all things that are going to require adjustments. And it's funny how over the last few years, the general media has finally figured out that the 53 Tuesday at 4 p.m. is not the real 53. You truly have to hold your breath for 24 hours. It's only the first 53. So just remember that. If you've got a favorite player or a dark horse player who's not on the roster as of 5 o'clock Tuesday, there's always a really good chance that he's back on the roster. The practice squad, I get it. But as long as he's in the building, that's all that really matters. I know to the player it doesn't, because he's not getting a regular game check. He's getting a practice squad check. There's not nearly as much money or as much security involved. But if you're a fan and you're worried about the team collecting good players, well, the practice squad is still a place where you can collect good players. So again, I implore you, don't overreact to Tuesday's cutdown day. Wait till the smoke clears on Wednesday and see who still remains in the building. That's the key to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk about some of the bubble positions for the Giants as they go into this game, because I'm sure you're going to see all of these players play an awful lot as the Giants figure out if they want to protect them, if they want to bring them back, if maybe they get a phone call from someone who wants to make an offer in a trade. There are still some things that have to be sorted through. I mean, at wide receiver, another guy who I think you have to talk about is Montrell Washington. He has been a bit inconsistent with his hands, but he does also give you something on special teams and explosiveness in the offense. Jackson Dart's a big fan of his. Russell Wilson is a big fan of little Jordan Humphrey. So I think the wide receiver room is very interesting. We know Juice Wells is in that wide receiver room. Right now, I think he's got more of an uphill battle, but he did play with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. So he does have something there that ties him to someone the Giants are going to keep. So Wells seems to me he'd be a perfect selection for the practice squad, but again, we will see. All right, as we look at the Giants' other positions on offense, I personally, myself, I don't have Turbo Miller on the bubble. I think Turbo Miller makes the Giants 53. He's on my 53 for sure. I've simply seen too much from him in terms of offensive production, gaining first downs, moving the chains, and also helping out on kickoff return and in kick coverage. So I do believe that the Giants will go with 4 running backs, and Dante Miller is going to be number 4, which would then require the Giants to slash somewhere else, meaning it's got to be 3 tight ends. It's not going to be 4. And I would select, obviously, Johnson, Bellinger, and Manhurts. And I think they'll have to take their chances that Dulcich, Fedoni, and Terry could be practice squad available. That's just the way I see it. I can't have the Giants keeping 4 tight ends. It's just going to be too many. They don't have enough room. Now, the offensive line's another spot. Do you keep 9 or do you keep 10? You know, if you keep 10, that means you're concerned about Andrew Thomas's foot not holding up. He was just activated off PUP on Monday, or Tuesday, I should say. No, Monday. He was activated on, let's see. No, it was Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. It's on my watch. It's Wednesday. So they may want to keep 10. But if they go 9, well, how about some of these guys who would be on the bubble? Stone Forsythe, the swing tackle who was formerly with the Seattle Seahawks. Jake Kubas, second-year right guard, who was a real pleasure for the coaching staff to have last year as an undrafted rookie free agent. Austin Schlottman, veteran center, who missed last year, injured, but is back trying to reclaim the number 2 center spot. I think Aaron Stinney, the swing guard, who has played in the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, is another guy for me that I believe would be on the bubble. And those are the players who I think right now, you know, obviously I think they're going to get a lot of time against the Patriots, and they're going to have to sway the coaches one way or the other as to whether or not they should be protected on the 53 or run the risk of seeing if you're going to be able to bring them back on the practice squad. We've talked about the quarterbacks. We talked about the tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, and offensive line. So there you go. Let's turn the page to the other side. Well, before we do that, let's mention special teams. I think Graham Gano has done enough. He's healthy. He's kicking well. I don't see any reason to expect him to be on the bubble. I believe he's the Giants kicker, and Jude McAtamney is a gentleman that I personally would love to bring back as the international exemption and player number 17 on the practice squad. I personally believe that Amir Smith-Marset is my pick to be the return guy, but there are obviously other guys in the mix. Gunnar Olszewski's in that mix, Montrell Washington, D. Williams. They've all had some reps at it over the course of the last few weeks, so we'll see how that plays out. But I would certainly go with Smith-Marset. But those other names are certainly bubble guys, and maybe they can make a dramatic impact in Thursday's game and kind of change the narrative. On defense, well, it looks to me, if we talk about the linebackers, and let's start there, the Giants got themselves a decision to make, because after their inside backers of McFadden and Okereke and Muasau, who I think are all on the team. You got to keep Chris Board because he is the number one special teams guy that you still have on the roster. So he's got to be in there. And if you keep one more, well, where are you going to go? I personally think Deontay Johnson, coming off last year's knee injury, I think he's done enough. He also helps on special teams. He's kind of an old-time linebacker in that he does hit people. He thuds pretty hard. And he also does have some athleticism. And he plays special teams. I kind of think right now that he's a bubble guy, but I like his chances over guys like Flanagan, Foles, and Cloyd. If you're looking at the outside linebacker spot, well, we know that Thibodeau and Burns and Carter are going to be there. How do you quantify Golston? I quantify him as a defensive end, but he's going to be there. So Trace Ford and Tamon Fox are probably battling for one spot. I think they're kind of very similar players. Ford is like Fox 2.0. So do they go with the younger guy or do they still believe in Fox? I think those two guys are kind of fighting for one spot as bubble guys. Defensive line-wise, certainly Nacho's going to be there. You know that Lawrence is going to be there. Alexander's going to be there. Robert Harris is going to be there. But if you're going to keep one more lineman, a fifth defensive lineman, what are you looking at? Elijah Chapman, who they've given some reps to at fullback? Certainly they're going to think about him. He's a bubble guy. DJ Davidson has been pretty active in the preseason games the last couple of weeks. That's another guy, a little bit bigger in the frame, that you're going to want to think about. Obviously, they got some leftovers here between Jordan Riley and Jeremiah Ledbetter and Elijah Garcia and Corey Durden. These are all guys who have, played okay during the preseason, but I think every one of those fellas is going to have to step up and really do something spectacular against the Patriots to force themselves on to the 53. Otherwise, the practice squad is not a bad place to be. In the secondary, well, I don't know who the fourth safety is. Newbin, Belton, Holland, they're definitely on the team, but who's the fourth safety? I don't know. The fourth safety might come off the waiver wire. That's certainly possible too. But guys like, Makari Page and Kayvon Wallace, well, they certainly are going to get an opportunity to see if they can make some spectacular plays to put themselves brighter on the radar. Same thing at corner. Adebo, Banks, Flott. Yeah, they're on the team, sure. But what about Trey Hawkins, who hasn't been able to stay on the field? Corey Black, who's been dinged up. D. Williams, the kick returner they got from Seattle at the end of last year. He's still in the mix. And obviously Art Green, who does play some special teams and has done a good job there. And then there's free agent O'Donnell Fortune. And then at nickel, well, it's definitely Drew Phillips' job. There's no question. But who's the next best nickel? Who's number 2 on the nickel depth chart? Is it Nick Jones? Is it TJ Moore? Well, it's probably Nick Jones. But I'll tell you what, all of these backup corners are liable to get a ton of action against the Patriots because somebody has to grab and seize a depth chart job. Because right now, I certainly think it's very possible the Giants wind up claiming a corner from somebody else, unless one of these guys really steps up and takes center stage against the Patriots. So that's where we stand. And we'll be back with another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown, the Game Balls and Gassers, on Friday morning, as we get a chance to review the game tape and we see what the coaches saw in the Giants' preseason finale against the New England Patriots at MetLife Stadium. So until then, I'm Paul Dottino, and we will see you down the road on the Big Blue Breakdown. Thank you so much for joining us.